So let me ask you a serious question. If I asked you to play the B minor, A minor, and E minor pentatonic scale within 4 frets of each other, would you be able to do it? Or what if I asked you if you could play the major thirds of a G chord all over the neck? Believe me, I know this stuff seems impossible to comprehend at first. I remember when I was learning and people mentioned things like thirds and sixths and ninths, and God forbid 11ths and 13ths. It just made me want to quit because it was so confusing. But with this 5-minute lesson and a few hours of practice, you can go from sounding like just a guitar player to a musician that plays guitar. Oh, and stick around for the third tip because I think it's one of the most important things that you can possibly learn. My name's Jesse Glick. This is a 5-Minute Monday. Let's get into it. So for those of you that are regular watchers of this channel, this first tip is going to sound like a broken record. I mention it all the time, but it's learning all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale across the neck of the guitar. This is so important when it comes to visualizing the fretboard and improvising freely and making the sounds that you want to make that you're hearing in your head on the fly. So very quickly, for those beginners that are trying to learn these pentatonics, I'll play it across the neck very slowly. And remember, on YouTube, you can always slow things down if I'm going a little bit too fast and just keep rewinding it until you get the shapes down. Today, we'll use the A minor pentatonic scale as our example. It's the same as the C major pentatonic scale. The reason being, it's really easy and central to the fretboard, so it's easy to go across. So again, play along with me if needed, but these are the 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. Hey, so I just wanted to quickly jump in and say if you made it this far, please consider subscribing. According to my analytics, the vast majority of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, and it's the easiest thing you can do for free to help me out. So click the subscribe button and like the video. Thank you. I really can't stress how important it is to learn all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale, and we don't have time to talk about how it's related to the cage system and all the other scales and chord shapes and chord tones that you can get from learning that, but just get those shapes under your fingers, and once you do, you should be able to move freely across the neck with the pentatonic scale and basically start singing on the guitar. We do not have a lot of time though, and we've only done 1 tip, so let's jump to the second one. Alright, so the second tip might seem really obvious, but I can't tell you how many students I've had who don't know this basic thing. And it's just knowing your notes everywhere on the neck. And I'm not talking about knowing how to find them. I'm just talking about inherently knowing what note you're playing all of the time. And what I mean by that is not thinking about the note, not thinking that this is an E, but rather knowing that if your finger's there and you look there, that you know it's an E. And the thing is, learning this is really simple because as guitar players, we pretty quickly learn your root notes on the low E string and the A string. And then on the high E string is all the same as the low E string. So really, it's just 3 strings that you need to learn, and I'm going to show you a really easy technique to make that happen. One of the beautiful things about the guitar is how visual everything is. You don't need to understand music theory to navigate your way across the fretboard as long as you memorize the shapes and how things correlate with each other. So for example, like I said before, you probably know the notes on the E and the A string. So if you want to learn the notes on the D and the G and the B strings, the best thing you can do is learn your octaves. So for example, you probably know that this is an A note, the 5th fret of the low E string. So if you want to find an A on the D string, you just need to go 2 frets up and then go to the D string, and that's your octave. So you have your A here and you have your A here. The reason why this is so useful is if you find yourself anywhere on the D string, I'm going to use the same technique to figure out what note it is. So I know that the octave shape looks like this, and I know that this is a G sharp. So this is a G sharp. The same rule can be applied on the A string and the G string. They have the same octave shape with your fingers. So if you know that this is a D note on the A string, then this must be a D note on the G string. So what if my finger lands right here on the D string? Well, I'm going to use that same octave shape to figure out what note it is. Finally, we just need to be able to figure out how to find notes on the B string. And this one's a little bit trickier because the intervals are slightly different, so the octave shape is not the same. So the best way to tackle learning every single note on the B string is actually to get the D string notes comfortable first. And we already talked about how to find the D string notes. So now that you know the D string notes, let's go to the 5th fret of the D string. That's a G note. So the octave shape to get to the B string, instead of 2 frets up, is going to be 3 frets up and over. So if this is a G note, this is a G note here. So that's the octave shape between the D string and the B string. So anytime you find yourself on the B string, let's say here, well, I'll go here because that's my octave shape, and I know that's a C because earlier we did the octave shape to find this C note from here. I know this stuff sounds pretty complicated, but once you give it a couple hours, all of a sudden it's going to come natural and you won't even have to think about it anymore. All right, so I can already tell that we're going over the 5-minute mark, but that's all right because this last tip is really important to me and I think it'll help you out a ton. As I mentioned before, the guitar is an extremely visual instrument. So earlier I showed you how octaves are really just shapes that you can use to find notes on the guitar. We can expand this idea for any interval on the guitar. And we're going to start slowly, and we'll start with the thirds because I think that's the most important interval for you to learn. Because if you're improvising, if you play the third of a chord, no matter what chord it is, even if it's some crazy jazz chord you've never heard of, if you just play the third, you will be safe and it will sound melodic. So similar to octaves, I'm going to show you what the third shape looks like on the guitar. So we're not talking about the notes. We don't need to memorize what the third is of each chord. We just need to know the shape relative to the root note. But very simply put, if we take an A note on the low E string, our third is going to be 1 fret back on the string over. So in this case, that's our major third. A minor third would just be 1 fret behind, but we're going to talk about major thirds for now. So this shape can be moved to any string except for between the G and the B string, which we'll get to. So if we have this shape here, that's a third. Next up, we'll find the next A, same shape. There's our third. Find another A, there's a third. So it's just 1 fret back on the string over. Where things get a little bit complicated is that the interval changes between the G and the B string. So the third is instead going to be the same fret of the string over. So if we have an A note on the G string, our third is on the same fret of the B string. And then for the B and the E strings, it goes back. So if I have an A note here, there's my third. Same shape everywhere. There's a third. 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 Third, and third. And remember, if it's a minor chord, you can just move that third back. So that's a really simple way to start memorizing your intervals on the guitar without having to think about the notes or memorizing the theory or anything like that. The last thing I'll quickly leave you with is the third is 1 fret back on the next string over. The 5th, which is the last thing you need to make a triad of the chord, is 2 frets up on the next string. So if I have a third here, here's my 5th. And that's going to be the same as everything else. So I have 5ths here as well. If this is the A note, 1 string over, 2 frets up, and then here. And then where it changes again is between the G and the B strings. This is what our 5th looks like. But then once we go back to the B and E, it's the same. So start with your thirds and fifths, but then start exploring, and then soon you'll just memorize what the shapes of all these intervals look like. Now, if I do that, I know that that's a sixth, and it's going to be the same here. So I'll leave you with that for now. Remember that the guitar is more of a visual instrument than it is needing to know the theory or memorizing all this stuff. As long as you know these shapes and how they relate to each other, and you use your ear, you'll train your ear to understand these intervals, not just from the shapes, but how you hear them. So I'm doing these 5-minute Monday lessons every single Monday for free. If you want to support my channel, hit the subscribe button and like the video and let me know what you thought about it. I'm also offering private online Zoom lessons, which have been going really well. If you want more information about that, shoot me an email at jessieglickmusic@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at jgglick. due to the holidays coming up, this is going to be my last 5-minute Monday lesson of the year. So I really appreciate all of you who have joined me along for this ride. It's been pretty crazy, and I'm super psyched to jump into 2025 and start uploading more videos. For now, my name's Jesse Glick. I hope you have an amazing holiday, and that was a 5